Coming up on our newscast tonight. In the same week they traveled to North Korea, President Moon Jae-in's special envoys now head to the United States to fill in their counterparts and possibly the American president on the outcome of the inter-Korean talks. With just a day left before the curtain rises for this year's PyeongChang Winter Paralympics, the host city gets busy putting the final touches to make sure the global games get off to a smooth start. This year's International Women's Day is made even more significant in Korea, with more and more victims of sex abuse breaking the silence, highlighting the need for social change to prevent such crimes. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Cha. The nation's presidential envoy head to Washington to discuss the outcome of their North Korea trip with their American counterparts. The meetings will be critical in the next phase of ensuring the U.S. and Pyongyang engage in denuclearization talks. Jeong starts us off.
2 days after they returned from a historic trip to North Korea, South Korea's chief presidential envoys headed for the U.S. on Thursday to meet officials there and discuss the outcome of their meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier in the week.
At this point, I cannot discuss any details of this trip, but the most urgent issue for us is to make sure the United States and North Korea will engage in talks.
President Moon Jae-in's directors of National Security Office and National Intelligence Service are scheduled to meet with their U.S. counterparts over the next 2 days, and possibly even President Donald Trump. U.S. officials will be looking to see if the South Jeong and Seo-hun reaffirm that the North Kim has promised to refrain from nuclear missile tests and to engage in negotiations on giving up its nuclear arsenal if its security is guaranteed.
Obviously, we're cautiously optimistic that there's some forward progress here, but we've been optimistic before, so we're going to have to watch actions and see if they match words.
That much was announced by the South Koreans upon return from their Pyongyang trip earlier in the week, but the South Korean leader's chief envoys have said they're carrying additional offers from North Korea's Kim Jong-un to pass on to U.S. President Donald Trump. They didn't announce what the plus alpha entails, but local media in South Korea are raising speculations. Among them, Pyongyang's vow to halt its development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, but dependent on, quote, U.S. attitude to the release of 3 U.S. citizens detained in the reclusive state. If Washington takes up on the offer, the American step likely will be to ask the North Koreans to directly reiterate that position, which could be done through a special envoy from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Now, if that's reaffirmed by North Korea, it would probably represent a sufficient basis for the U.S. to begin talking with North Korea. But the ball is now in U.S. court. What's for sure is that the plus alpha that the South Korean delegation is carrying to pass over to Washington will serve as a make it or break it factor in what could potentially become a historic turning point. Jeong, Arirang News, the Blue House.
Military authorities have been quiet about exactly when Seoul and Washington will hold their combined exercises. The drills may kick off at the end of the month. Some suggest scaling down the event could contribute to a successful inter-Korean summit in April. Jeong explains further.
U.S. media reports say South Korea and the U.S. will kick off their annual joint military drills at the end of this month. Quoting several defense officials in Washington, NBC and CNN reported Wednesday that the full legal exercise will start on March 31st and last until May, while key resolve will take place in mid or late April. Full legal is a field drill and key resolve is a computerized simulation. They were supposed to begin in late February or early March, but were postponed until after the PyeongChang Winter Olympics and Paralympics to encourage North Korea's participation in the Games. Along with the U.S., the South Korea military has also been firm that the drills will be held as scheduled. But there has been speculation that the drills could be downsized, which would mean fewer U.S. strategic assets, or that they could be shortened to help continue the thaw in relations with Pyongyang. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly expressed understanding about the drills when he spoke to envoys from Seoul earlier this week. In return, some, including South Korea's former Unification Minister Lee Jong-seok, think South Korea and the U.S. could extend an olive branch to the north. Lee served as South Korea's Unification Minister in 2006, and he said at an open forum on Thursday that downscaling the joint military drills could help set a better foundation for a successful inter-Korean summit next month. As for those specifics, whether the drills will be smaller or shorter, Seoul's defense ministry hasn't yet said, but an announcement is expected after March 18th when the Paralympics come to an end. 오정희, Arirang News.
President Moon described the recent inter-Korean agreement as a big step toward peace on the peninsula. Hwang Ho-jun has more on the liberal leader's comments made at the Korea National Prayer Breakfast.
President Moon Jae-in once again emphasized the significance of the outcome of the recent inter-Korean agreement while attending the Korean National Prayer Breakfast, marking its Jubilee year. Addressing the 5,000 attendees that included church leaders, politicians, and government officials, President Moon called the agreement a big step toward lasting peace and the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The president's remarks come a couple days after his top security advisor Jeong and the head of the nation's intelligence agency, Seo Hoon, returned from their high-profile trip to Pyongyang. They delivered news that the North has agreed to return to the negotiation table, even willing to discuss the issue of denuclearization, and will suspend all its military provocations as long as it's in dialogue with the U.S. The agreement also included Seoul and Pyongyang holding what would be a third inter-Korean summit late next month. President Moon stressed such achievements were made possible not only by talks between the Koreas, but also by strong U.S. support. However, he noted there are still obstacles to overcome, which, according to President Moon, are scars that have not healed because of the prolonged conflict and antagonism between the two Koreas.
우리의 운명을 남에게 맡길 수는 없는 노릇입니다. 미국을 비롯한 국제사회와 함께 손잡고 북한과 대화하며 한 걸음 한 걸음씩 한반도의 평화와 번영을 위한 초석을 놓겠습니다.
During the meeting, President Moon also expressed his gratitude for the role the Korean Church has played in South Korea's development and democratization and asked for the people's prayers for the future of the nation. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
PyeongChang and Gangneung once again are charged up with the same level of enthusiasm and intensity as the stage is set for the Paralympics. Let's go straight to our Won Jung-hwan standing by at the Alpine town. Jung-hwan, even though the opening ceremony is tomorrow and it's pouring outside right now.
Hi, Daniel. Yes, as you can see, the snow has covered PyeongChang. The local organizers expect about 10 to 20 centimeters of snow to fall down from now to tomorrow morning, giving them just a little bit of time to clear up the snow for the opening ceremony, which will be held at the Olympic Stadium in the evening. As you know, the Olympic Stadium, the pentagon-shaped arena, which can hold 35,000 spectators, doesn't have a roof. So to clear the snow from the stage and from the seats, the organizers said they will use every resource available. Workers and the nearby military unit will be dispatched on Friday morning to help clear the snow at the venue. The organizers have been working hard to clear the snow, which have been falling on and off since Sunday last week. But they are quite optimistic as the weather for Friday's opening ceremony will not be as cold as before. For the Winter Olympics opening ceremony, the organizer had to prepare for freezing weather, with temperatures reaching minus 10 degrees Celsius. But for the Winter Paralympic Games, the organizers are expecting warmer weather with temperatures around minus 3 degrees Celsius.
All right, Jeong, other than the variables of elements, is PyeongChang ready to provide the athletes with everything they need for the Games?
Yes, PyeongChang is ready for what will be the largest Winter Paralympics so far, with nearly 600 athletes from 49 countries will compete in 6 sports for 80 gold medals. But among many athletes, let's take a look how the national South Korean team is preparing for the upcoming Games. The Paralympic athletes are ready to show us the infinite potential of mankind. And the host nation is once again sending its largest ever delegation to the PyeongChang Games, with 36 athletes and 47 officials in all 6 sports. Team Korea is hoping to make the top 10, with a target of 1 gold medal, 1 silver, and 2 bronze medals. The athletes of Team Korea showed their determination at the launch ceremony, which was held last week.
I've trained and lived in the snow for the games, which will be held in a few days. I am ready for the race.
We prepared a lot in terms of skills and mental training. As we're ready in every aspect, we believe we'll achieve a good result.
The country has yet to win a gold medal at the Winter Paralympics. But this time could be different as South Korean ice sledge hockey player Jeong is determined to lead his country to a podium finish at the Paralympic Games.
This is a stage I have dreamed of since I first started ice hockey. As this is held in my home country and many of my friends and fans will come and cheer for us, I believe we will do very well and I hope to win a gold medal.
As you can see, the Team Korea is ready to perform their best at the Winter Paralympics, which will be starting tomorrow. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Jeong, thank you for instilling that extra confidence in the fact that South Korea will be able to host the Global Games back-to-back. North Korean athletes have arrived here in the nation and are gearing up for their first Winter Paralympics in the South. The 24-member delegation, including Chole and Kim Jong-hyun, will compete in Nordic skiing events, cross the border on Wednesday, and enter the athletes' village in PyeongChang. The visiting squad took part in an official welcoming ceremony at the athletes' village. Amid fears of a looming trade war and rising protectionism, we're finally seeing some positive developments. 11 countries are set to ink a mega free trade pact. Kim Hye-sung introduces to us the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
A year after the U.S. withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the 11 remaining countries are due to sign a new agreement in Chile on Thursday local time. The deal, rebranded as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, was revamped last year after 11 countries, including Japan, Australia, and Canada, agreed to keep the trade pact.
The signing of the deal is very meaningful. It serves as an antidote to counter rising protectionism, with the Trump administration threatening to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, a shift back to the 1930s when a global trade war took place.
The TPP would have represented around 1/3 of world trade. Yet even without Washington, the 11 remaining states represent over 13% of the world economy, or $10 trillion. The CPTPP spans a market of near 500 million people, greater than the European Union. It aims to cut import tariffs and drops around 20 clauses on intellectual property regulations that had been demanded by the U.S. It will go into effect 60 days after it's ratified by at least 6 member countries. South Korea is not a member of the CPTPP, but it has bilateral free trade deals with 9 of the 11 members other than Japan and Mexico. Seoul's Trade Ministry says it will closely look into the CPTPP, analyze its economic effect, and decide whether it will join by the end of this year. The ministry added that it's looking into joining the Pacific Alliance trade bloc, including Mexico, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump will soon be announcing his administration's final tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Attention shifts to whether Korea would be among the list of exempted countries, as talks to amend the CORES-FTA hasn't been finalized yet. According to the Washington Post, Peter Navarro, a top White House trade advisor, said on Wednesday that temporary exemptions for Mexico and Canada are highly likely as negotiations on the NAFTA deal are still underway. Even though Trump announced earlier this month plans to slap tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum imports all across the board, there still exists a possibility of exempting a few ally nations that are also important trade partners. The world celebrates the 110th International Women's Day. Korea is no exception. Massive rallies to demand equal rights was held in the nation's capital. Kim Mo-kyun takes us there.
International Women's Day is a global celebration that sheds light on the struggle for women's rights. The day was created to commemorate American female laborers who fought for their labor and voting rights in 1908, and this year, South Korea has officially designated the day as a public occasion. One of the nation's largest labor organizations, the Korea Federation of Trade Unions, held a special event to celebrate the day's 110th anniversary. Hundreds of thousands of members of the union gathered in front of Seoul's Gwanghwamun Square at 2 p.m. to attend the National Female Laborers Conference, which seeks to highlight inequalities such as a gender wage gap in Korea.
The root of the sexual harassment cases is not just because of one individual, but also because of the current social customs. We will work to create a society where women's labor and sexual rights can be respected.
Participants then joined the annual 3 o'clock stop event to join some 13 different organizations, hoping to improve the conditions of female workers in Korea. The event, which is the second of its kind, demands for female workers to stop and finish work at 3 p.m. According to the organizers, the wage gap in South Korea was twice the OECD average at 36.7% in 2015, which means that the wage women receive for a day's work is only equivalent to the wage men receive for working until 3 p.m. The laborers demanded that the government find a solution to the multiplying sexual assault cases, solve the gender-based wage gap, and respect the labor rights of women. The participants, most of them dressed in black, holding pickets that read 3 o'clock stop and MeToo, shouted for women not to be afraid anymore. There were also male participants who raised their voices for gender equality.
I came here to show my support towards eradicating violence against women, especially nowadays when sexual harassment cases are rising. I hope that the government could come up with measures that can solve this problem as soon as possible.
Some of these people have been marching since this morning, and many also joined the street rally heading to the Ministry of Employment and Labor in Chunggu District.
I decided to visit because I wanted to celebrate the 110th anniversary of this special day. I hope such movement can create a real democratic society where there is no sexual discrimination.
With ongoing campaigns such as the MeToo movement, many hope the day could be an opportunity for women to be brave in speaking out. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The Korean government announced a new set of plans to prevent sexual violence in the workplace and much more as the MeToo movement spreads in the nation. Park Ji-won gets us up to speed with the developments.
In a press briefing Thursday morning, the Minister of Gender Equality and Family, Jeong announced that 12 related ministries are currently working on strengthening legal frameworks to eradicate sexual harassment and assault in the workplace. They are also cracking down on sex offenses in the arts and culture industry, where there have been numerous shocking accusations against prominent artists. Most importantly, the government will strengthen punishments for sex-related crimes. The maximum prison sentence for using workplace influence to coerce someone into non-consensual sex will be increased to 10 years from the current 5 years. The statute of limitations on such cases will be lengthened from the current 7 to 10 years. The government is also considering a revision to the nation's criminal laws so that people who try to cover up or ignore such incidents at work could also face criminal charges. Victims will be given stronger protection from the government to reduce the fear of being sued by the accused for slander by revising libel and slander regulations. The government will also conduct a special investigation into the recent string of sexual assault allegations, particularly those coming from the country's arts and culture sector. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The potential presidential candidate stepped out of the political arena following allegations of sexual assault. Jeong had a hotly anticipated press conference planned for today, but canceled last minute, saying an investigation should be carried out before his public appearance. Kim Min-ji has the full story.
With hundreds of police on site, it was expected to be a heavily fortified press conference with reporters crowding in from early in the morning. From a potential presidential candidate to an alleged rapist, the now former governor of Chungcheongnam-do Province, Jeong, said he would make a public apology Thursday. He hadn't appeared in public since the rape allegations came to light 3 days earlier.
It was here the press waited for hours for An to break his silence, but with 2 hours left before the scheduled briefing, he called it off abruptly, saying as the people demand he undergo questioning, that should be prioritized before he makes a public apology.
That came in a short text message, and the setting where many had expected An would use to tell his side of the story turned to chaos.
The cancellation was announced through a text from An's aide to reporters at the provincial government. I didn't talk to him today. We just talked on the phone yesterday in regard to holding the briefing, but that's it.
Considering An's clean image prior to the scandal, some had even expressed doubt about the claim that he raped his secretary. But the mood changed somewhat on Wednesday after a second alleged victim, who worked at a think tank established by An, claimed she too had been sexually assaulted several times. An's downfall, the first case in the political sphere since the MeToo movement spread to Korea early this year, has raised concerns that there may be many more to come. A preliminary candidate from the ruling party planning to run for Seoul mayor, Jeong, has also been accused of sexually assaulting a female reporter. Jeong has denied that and said he would sue for defamation. It now appears the MeToo movement has a potential to become a game changer in the upcoming June local elections. Pundits warn, however, that parties should refrain from using the issue as a political tool, saying that all parties are equally at risk of scandal amid a fast-spreading MeToo movement that's encouraging more victims to speak up. What's for sure is that the ruling party will be scrambling to prevent its image from being tarnished, since all the accused so far are associated with them. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The worldwide MeToo movement is reshaping Korean society by bringing to attention gender discrimination and abuses under rigid hierarchical structures. A growing number of women are bravely sharing their experiences of sexual assault and harassment and are encouraging others to do the same. Park Hee-jun turns the spotlight to what more needs to be done.
It all began when a female prosecutor revealed her experience of being sexually harassed by her senior within the prosecution. And now, a month into the movement, a flood of MeToo allegations continues to spread from industry to industry. Social changes appear to be underway in Korea, and people are hoping for permanent transformation. In the past, when Korean women spoke out about their experiences, they often faced a harsh backlash despite them being the victims. The male perpetrators, on the other hand, were rarely punished, and their crimes were swept under the carpet, meaning women felt unable to let their voices be heard. But the MeToo movement has paved the way for women to boldly discuss their experiences.
There have been many revelations of sexual violence before, but unlike the past, the public is generally much more sympathetic to the victims. People also recognize that it's not just a problem within a certain organization or industry, but society as a whole.
But most agree that there's still a long way to go before the deep-rooted culture of sexual violence in Korea is eradicated.
Although a lot of women have come forward, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The movement is still concentrated around people and industries well known to the public. More women are suffering in far more serious environments, and the movement needs to spread to those areas as well.
Experts believe fundamental and systematic change requires a shift in perception that they say is best achieved through education. In a legal sense as well, change is necessary.
The law needs to be revised as it currently requires victims to prove they were sexually assaulted before they can take the case forward. They are asked why they didn't resist at the time when it's difficult to do so due to men's power or influence. Because of that, predators rarely end up being punished.
The MeToo movement is viewed as a significant phenomenon that's smashing barriers in Korea's patriarchal society. However, for the MeToo movement to take a big step forward, experts say it's important to carry on the momentum and give women more confidence to let their voices be heard so the issue doesn't fizzle out in a few months. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it was cloudy all day in Seoul, while some regions were being piled up with snow. How are things looking right now?
Well, Daniel, Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-buk provinces received heavy snow today. In particular, Gangwon-do province is expected to get up to 8 centimeters or more snow through the night. Now, after the snow, freezing temperatures will return for a couple more days. Now, Seoul will wake up to 0 degrees Celsius, take below sub-zero readings, and Busan starts at 2 degrees. As for the daily highs, Seoul tops out to 8 degrees, Gwangju, Busan will hit 12 and 9 degrees respectively. In the next 5 days, widespread clear skies are predicted with cold morning lows. However, into next week, the mercury will start to rise into the mid-teens during the day. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you as always for staying with us.